feel free to turn your cameras off, any attendees. All right, and I'm just gonna share my screen really quickly. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Oscar Boschelli. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives at JEC Chicago, and I'm also a rising junior at Walter Payton College Prep. And we're really honored to have panelists from the Harvard Alumni Club of Chicago join us today just to share a little bit more about their university, what life looks like before, during, and after college. And just to provide some more context about JEC for any visiting non-members or just our panelists, we're a nonprofit established in 2014 and since then have expanded to over 9 cities nationwide. We have over 100 members and our member base is still growing to this day. And if interested at all, please just visit our website at Junior Economic Club of Chicago. And yeah, with all that being said, I think we can start to get knowing each of our panelists. So we're gonna start off with Helen.
Yeah. Is there any specific you want me to go over or anything? All right.
Yeah, just in a quick introduction of yourself.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. My name is Helen Zeng. I'm originally from Boston, so I didn't really venture far for college. As you can tell, went to Harvard. And then after Harvard, I was working in finance in New York City. And then after that, I was at California in the Silicon Valley area doing corporate stuff within a data center company. And then now I'm currently in Chicago working for Grubhub in market operations. So happy to talk about any of my experiences or answer any questions you have related to all those different career paths if you want. So let me know if whatever you want to talk about. For fun facts, I really like traveling. Major trip before, I guess after college, was going to Thailand and staying with my friend who I met at Harvard because she's originally from Thailand, and getting to try all the authentic Thai iced tea and mango lassi, or not mango sticky rice. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Helen. And then next we have Phillip.
Hey guys, my name is Phillip Acevedo, class of 2013 from Harvard. I am actually from Chicago, born and raised here. Grew up around the Lincoln Park, Lakeview area, and went to St. Ignatius for high school. Obviously went to Harvard for undergrad and spent a couple years in Boston working as a paralegal at a plaintiff side employment and labor law firm. Convinced me that I wanted to go to law school, but not necessarily do E&L work. So went to law school, and I now am a corporate lawyer at a firm downtown called Sidley Austin, which I don't know why I didn't put this as my fun fact. So Sidley is where Barack Obama and Michelle Obama met. He was a summer associate and she was his associate advisor. So yeah, fun fact about the firm. I guess another fun fact about me, I competed in the 2005 National Spelling Bee. Certainly did not take it as seriously as other folks. Just kind of showed up and had a free trip to DC and met all these really cool kids, and they were very methodical and serious about their studying, and I was just not. But that was a fun experience.
Thank you, Phillip. I think Samir just joined, and Samir, sorry to put you on the spot, but would you maybe want to just introduce yourself to everyone? And I think you went to I think I accidentally sent you the Google Meet instead.
Hi, are my video and audio working okay?
Yeah, they're doing great.
Okay, great. I can't see myself, so I'm not sure. Thanks, Oscar, for inviting me to participate in this event. I didn't realize that both Phil and I would list meeting heads of state on our fun facts, but I met Bill Clinton and the Prime Minister of Japan, as well as I randomly bumped into Robin Williams, the late Robin Williams, on the streets of Manhattan once. So I graduated from Harvard in 2002, Harvard College and Harvard Law School in 2007. Oh, I grew up in Michigan, in the Detroit area mostly, I also lived in Toronto for 2 years during high school because I guess you could say because my mom's from Canada. My parents actually met in Toronto in the 1970s. We have a lot of family there. That's also why I'm a dual citizen of Canada in my fun facts. Since finishing law school in '07, I have worked in various capacities in the Chicago area as an attorney. I've worked in 2 private law firms. I've worked as a clerk for a federal judge. I've worked for 2 state government agencies, and I currently work for a large environmental nonprofit.
Thank you, Samir. And yeah, I think those are all of our panelists. So we're just going to move into the questions I have for you, Faze. So I think my first question to everyone is, why did you choose Harvard? And maybe Helen could kick us off for this one.
Yeah, so I guess it's like, one, I've always heard about Harvard, you know, growing up in Boston, it's very close by. I went to Boston Latin School, and Harvard Medical School was literally a 2-minute walk from our high school. So I was just always heard about Harvard. But really it came down to 2 things. One, I really wanted to go to a college that was going to be rigorous and had like the best academic experience that they could provide to me. And I felt like Harvard definitely had that, with renowned professors, tons of awesome people coming on campus to talk to you about all sorts of topics. And then second was the unparalleled brand of Harvard. I felt like I could do anything, even if it's you want to create a random trip to a country you've never been to before, you could find a Harvard connection, you could get that trip done and like meet super cool people, as Phil and Samir had mentioned, like head of states, you know. So I felt like I could lose nothing by going to Harvard and really just gain so much more experience and like learning in general.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. Maybe Philip could go next.
Yeah, sure. So I think my story is a little, sorry for the background noise. We have some people staying with us, family from out of town. But was just going to say that, you know, I think like Helen grew up in Boston, obviously, and I did not. But Harvard was actually my first college visit. When I was 10 years old, my mom took me as just like a fun trip. So she was a public interest lawyer and was invited by Harvard Law, I think, to talk about careers in public interest law, and just to show law students like what it is that you could do. So she brought me along, and you know, that was my first college experience, and I just thought it was really cool to see students in the you know, in the dining halls and in the coffee shops in and around Harvard Square, studying, talking about different stuff, with a stack of books this high, and just kind of like very involved in what it is that they were doing. And, you know, I was a pretty nerdy 10-year-old, and I just thought to myself, this place is pretty cool. I didn't know what it meant. You know, I didn't know what the brand was. I didn't really even know what college was in general, but I just knew that college was the next step. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go to Harvard. That's what I'm going to do. And my mom was like, all right, cool. Good for you, kid. But you're going to have to work really hard if you want to do this. And you need to understand that it's a competitive school, and, you know, certainly opens up a lot of opportunity. And 10-year-old me was like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. I'll do it. Like, and I guess I just always had in the back of my mind, like, that was my personal goal. And so, you know, come junior year, when I was getting really serious about applying to colleges and realized that I was, you know, competitive and within the range of what Harvard was looking for, you know, I had to start asking myself the tough question, like, okay, why do I want this school and not just another one? And I think, you know, for many of the reasons that Helen echoed, I think you have a really rigorous academic setting for a number of disciplines. It's not focused in any single discipline. It is, Harvard is a place where you can excel in molecular and cellular biology and economics and physics and political philosophy and classics. It's just, you know, they're very good at a ton of different subjects. And then the research opportunities and the extracurricular opportunities are second to none. I happened to bump into the former president of Mexico, Phillip Acevedo, at the Institute of Politics on campus. I was there for some meeting and ran into the guy, and I was just like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I took a second look, and I was like, "Wait, are you Phillip Acevedo?" And he was like, "Yeah." And my family's from Mexico, and so we started talking about, just Mexican politics and what he had done. And it was like, a fun 5 or 10 minute interaction. But it's the kind of thing where, stuff like that only can happen at a place like Harvard. I'm very thankful that I had those experiences. I think the people are second to none. The experiences are second to none. And it's the kind of place where you learn not just in the classroom, you are learning when you're outside of the classroom, when you're at the coffee shops, when you're at IHOP, after a night out with your friends at 1 in the morning and you're eating pancakes. It's a really wonderful place.
Thank you so much, Philip. And then we have Samir.
Thanks, Oscar. So back in high school, in the spring of 1998, when I was choosing which college to attend, I think I was choosing among Harvard, Stanford, and Yale. And as I mentioned at the time, I lived in Toronto for my last 2 years of high school. I applied to some of the top Ontario or Canadian universities. So I was choosing among like Waterloo and University of Toronto, also maybe a couple others, which, by the way, are very cheap if you are fortunate to live there and be accepted. So that was certainly a tantalizing option to go to world-class universities for a very low price. But ultimately, I chose to go to Harvard because I didn't really know much back then about career horizons or what I could expect to get from different universities, but I felt like, well, Harvard's the best, so I should go to Harvard. And I think I was not disappointed. Ultimately, I think the greatest value I got from my Harvard undergraduate experience was being among very talented and driven young people who had big expectations for themselves, and in some cases already had a clear plan for how they were going to vault themselves into academia in the future, or the financial world, or some even had a plan for how to get into entertainment, and in many cases they succeeded. At 18, I didn't really have the confidence to see myself in that way, or the understanding of how real world career paths could actually work in that way. I had always been good at school growing up, but I didn't quite have the presence of mind to think of myself in some of the elevated ways that other fellow students did. And I think it was good for me to be around students with a clear idea of where they wanted to go. It motivated me. I could see if I just gave the effort level I did in high school, which had turned out pretty well in high school, but if I did so in college, I wouldn't get very far. So I had to elevate my performance level at that time, which has served me well in future opportunities in my work life, where you have to work really hard to get stuff done on time at a high level of quality. So the campus is great, the faculty is great at Harvard, but most of all, I think I benefited from being around fellow students.
Thank you, Samir. Yeah, I think just to like echo what everyone's saying, it seems like Harvard just has like this unparalleled opportunity and this sense of community that like you don't find anywhere else. And I just think that's a really, really special thing. And I'm just gonna move on to the next question. And my next question is, why did you choose your major? And maybe Phil can kick us off for this one.
Sure. So I came in, I actually wanted to, I feel like this is so typical, but I will just say the world is not cleanly divisible into lawyers and doctors. You can do more than the two. But for me, I was like, well, I came from a family of lawyers, so I was like, all right, well, law would be cool. I know what that's about. And then I thought to myself, I'm reasonably good at science. Maybe being a doctor would be cool. So I came in as a physics and a chemistry major initially, and I think when I started hitting like biology and genetics and digging into what it took to be a doctor, I was like, I probably don't want to do this. So I need to find something else. And I happened to be taking EC 10, which is our intro economics class. I think, have my text. Yeah, my textbook is right over here on my bookshelf. And it was taught by Greg Mankiw. And then we had a bunch of preceptors who ran you through different exercises in broken down sections. And I quickly realized that a lot of the math background that I had picked up for physics and chemistry was applicable to economics. So that was kind of a nice pivot and not a total waste of that knowledge. And then it was just, economics is very much a course about how we deal with scarcity in the world. It's not necessarily about money, and it's not necessarily about, maximizing return on whatever investment that you happen to be doing. But it is very much concerned with, we have finite resources. How do we allocate them among billions of people? And that question and the tools used to answer questions that are based upon that premise, that was really interesting to me, and kind of informed my decision to go forward and eventually enter law school and go into practice as a corporate lawyer.
Thank you, Phil. Maybe Samir could go next, same question.
Sure, thank you, Oscar. So my undergraduate major was environmental science and public policy, which in fact, at the time when I chose it in my freshman year, 1999, was a new program at Harvard that had been created maybe 4 or 5 years earlier. I was one of the first cohorts to choose that program. I guess during high school, I'd been interested in environmentalism, environmental science issues. Again, I didn't have a very deep understanding of how to connect myself to actual real world environmental controversies, and I had a naive view that maybe studying this major could help. The environmental science and public policy major at Harvard was then, I think still is to some degree, a mix of science requirements in geology, atmospheric science, chemistry, etc., with policy-focused courses in economics, government, as well as some statistics as well. If I could choose one thing to do a little differently, I would have maybe taken a few more optional courses that went beyond the minimal requirements of this major to go a little deeper into some of the scientific topics we were focusing on in geology, atmospheric science, and so forth. So I think that gave me a good base of knowledge and knowledge of the core academic topics, as well as some of the controversial socio-political issues out there that we're going to confront the nation and world over the next 2 decades, which I've tried to get involved in various ways. When I was in law school, I was able to do a tiny bit of work on the landmark Massachusetts v. US EPA Supreme Court case that resulted in the US EPA regulating carbon dioxide emissions for the first time. In my government work, I've worked on renewable energy incentives, and currently in my job at a large nonprofit, I do energy regulatory litigation with environmental focus, targeting coal and gas-fired power plants mostly. So certainly, I think I made a good decision. Oh, I should also mention that in law school, I took a lot of coursework focused on environmental and energy policy related topics.
Thank you, Samir. And then Helen.
Sounds good. So I'm gonna just say out loud, when I went to college, I thought I was gonna be a lawyer, surprisingly, and I was gonna go take government. I was gonna be a government major, I thought, and I took one of the intro government classes, and I thought, this doesn't seem as interesting to me as I kind of made myself believe it would be. And so I felt like at that point, I thought, what am I going to do? There's like, we have to declare concentrations. I'm so like clueless. Everyone else seems to have a plan, and that's okay. Like, just to put it out there, it's okay if you don't know what you're going to major in, and you don't know what you want to study. That's what college is for. That's what like freshman year is for. And so one of the same classes I took as Phillip there is EC 10, and I took it because I thought, well, it's a major basic course that everyone should take. Like, I want to kind of understand the basic economic theories. It seems so relevant to what we're reading in the news. And so I took it not thinking like this is going to make my decision, but it actually did end up helping me make my concentration decision. Like, I really enjoyed our classes and the exposure we got, because Professor Mankiw, who writes the economics book, is really good about bringing outside speakers, not just, you know, from Harvard, but from elsewhere too, and bringing in different topics. And I really like that. I really like that broad exposure I could get despite studying one thing only. Growing up, I always feel like I was a very curious kid, and I didn't want to limit my study in college. And EC 10 really showed me that I could take, you know, economics and study something else with it. Like, that's a really awesome part about Harvard, and specifically Harvard's economic program. It's one of the best in the world, and you can study anything from like healthcare economics to world economic history, which I did. So I just felt like it was a really awesome way to combine a whole slew of different disciplines and still kind of have your pick of what you want to choose to take and learn from. So I really like that, and that ended up being what I chose for my concentration, and I don't regret it. So don't be worried if you didn't know what you wanted to do. Like, it's great to explore that in college, especially at Harvard. You just can take all these interesting classes and decide for yourself, like, what do you want to do further? What do you want to dig into more?
Thank you, Helen, and thank you all for your answers. Yeah, I think it's really, really important to explore your interests, and yeah, that'll end up deciding your major later on, and it's okay to not have a plan right away. Next question is, what were some of your favorite classes at Harvard? And then maybe Phil could kick us off for this one.
I think the two that stand out to, well, yeah, I think the two that stand out to me, I took, one was a constitutional law class for undergrads. So, you know, the way that you teach law to law students is you're using the Socratic method. You are kind of cold calling people, putting them on the spot, and, you know, testing whether they did the reading. And then you're using either their correct answers or their incorrect answers to, you know, kind of inform the way that the rest of the lecture goes. And this was sort of like that. And it was a nice taste of what it would be like to be a law student. So I really liked it for that purpose. And then there was also, you know, con law is a really interesting and fun class, and in many ways can be more difficult than a science class, because you would at least think that in a science class you have, you know, there's a right answer at the end of it, right? You know, something reduces to something else, or, you know, there's a certain number that's the correct answer. And here, in the context of con law, you don't necessarily have a right answer. You have justices who may be, you know, interpreting the law differently based on, you know, kind of different priors or different theories of legal interpretation. And so exposing the nuances of that sort of thinking was really interesting to me, especially because I guess I kind of knew that you could have disagreements on the court, but I didn't really understand why these disagreements came about. Or rather, I thought, you know, maybe the disagreements are just that some judges are appointed by Democrats, some are appointed by Republicans, and then they have preconceived notions about, you know, what should be the correct outcome, and that's really determining how it is that they interpret certain statutes or certain laws. And, you know, I think that could be an answer, but, you know, in many cases, the writing of the justices is shown to be very nuanced and very informed by, you know, if someone's an originalist, you know, or someone's a textualist, coming in and approaching a problem from those perspectives really, I thought was pretty illuminating. And then, so that was, one of my favorite classes. And then the second one completely has nothing to do with law. It was called Music 1B. It was a survey of music in the Western world from the era of Beethoven, I think, through John Williams. And I grew up, I was a violinist, and, had studied many of these pieces, but never really put together, different like musical thoughts or theories or movements. And this was a class that did that. And we were not only lectured, but we were also serenaded each day by our professor, because he would go up to the piano and then start, playing different things. And so it was a really, really cool class.
Thank you, Phil. Maybe Helen could go next for the same question.
Yeah, for sure. I would say a few of my favorite classes. One from economics would have to be something I mentioned, like world economic history. I took that with Professor Robinson, who is now actually at U Chicago, but he wrote the book with another MIT professor, I believe, Why Nations Fail. And it's one of these like basic economic theories that you learn about in Ec 10 even. And so I got to like dig deeper into that. And we got to read his book. We got to hear from like the professor, the author of this book, essentially. And I thought that was incredible. Like, where else am I going to take class from such a renowned professor, someone who's doing such great, awesome work in the field. So that was really cool. One of my favorite classes. And also I personally like history. So that falls in line with what I was interested in, like kind of looking at history, but with an economic lens. Why did certain nations rise up and why did certain ones fail? Super good read. Highly recommend it if you want to check that out. But the second class that has nothing to do with economics is the science of cooking. It fulfills one of the science general education requirements that Harvard makes you do, which I'm really grateful for because it exposes you to different fields outside of your concentration. And why did I like that one? It was so cool. Your labs involve cooking, essentially, like cooking pasta, baking a molten chocolate lava cake, but it's still like you're still learning the science of cooking. What temperatures will yield you the best like oozy molten lava cake, that's not dry. So that was like an interesting way that Harvard tries to incorporate different disciplines and still made such a really interesting class. Like I still think about it. I still kind of like reference it as one of my favorite classes whenever someone asks me, like on a different side note, and it's just like an awesome way to see Harvard kind of demonstrate that it's not just lecture-based classes, or it's not just a certain way to teach you the real hard science or of something like that. So I would say those were some of my favorite classes, and I'm sure Philip and Samir could tell you the same. Like it's still in your mind even after you take it. And so I think Harvard's a really awesome place for showing you how to learn in an interesting new way.
For the record, science of cooking was something that my friends took, all of them, and I did not, and I was very jealous. It looks like a very cool class.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Philip. May Samir could go next, and same question.
Thank you, Oscar. So my favorite courses, similar to Phil and Helen, were not from my major, but rather were courses I took as a result of Harvard's distribution requirement, which they've called the program different names over the years, but the basic idea is regardless of major, everyone has to take a couple courses in natural science, a couple courses in social science and history, a couple courses in humanities, and so on. So the three courses that come to mind most fondly were number one, also a music class similar to Phil. This one was called First Nights. It was a classic that hundreds of students enrolled in every year. They sat in Harvard's auditorium to listen to one of the preeminent music faculty profs teach us about the social and economic conditions around the staging of the very first night of 5 very famous performances, 5 very famous pieces of European classical music, namely Orfeo by Monteverdi, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Handel Messiah, Berlioz' Symphonie Fantastique, and Stravinsky, The Rite of Spring. I have no musical ability whatsoever. My kids are taking piano lessons, but I have, as a child, I had no musical ability whatsoever, and I enjoyed the class, not just for learning some of the minutiae about what it took to stage a concert in 18th century Vienna, but also in the small sections led by grad students, we were required to write response papers actually applying a tiny bit of, I don't want to say musical theory, but at least trying to take apart some of the instrumentation and figure out what's actually happening in a piece of music. So that was pretty cool. Then there were 2 literature courses I really enjoyed. One about Enlightenment literature, largely French literature. So we read Diderot, Voltaire, Rousseau, and then we read The Sorrows of Young Werther by Goethe, and some English philosophers as well. And then there's a Russian literature course where I got turned on to Dostoevsky, Turgenev, Tolstoy, as well as some like very modern Russian literature from the early 20th century in the pre-Soviet and early Soviet era. And I still have a big library in my home full of some of those Russian books that I bring out from time to time. So I think it was that turn of focus that I might not otherwise have taken on my own if not for these distributional requirements that stayed with me the most.
Yeah, thank you guys, and thank you all for your answers. Yeah, it seems like just Harvard makes you step out of your comfort zone a lot, and that isn't through just like a core curriculum. It's just added requirements that make sure you're doing stuff outside of your major. And my next question is, can you talk about any internships you've done and how you went about acquiring those opportunities? And maybe Helen could start us off for this one.
Right. So I did 2 internships when I was at college. One was at a healthcare hedge fund right after my sophomore year, but that was actually acquired through a mentorship program I did before. So they had a connection there. And then the second one I actually got through our recruiting program at Harvard. I was interning at an investment bank in New York City, which I ended up doing full time at Bank of America Merrill Lynch, also in their healthcare group because I wanted to stay within healthcare. Thought that space was really interesting. And I just wanted to kind of give you like an idea of how Harvard does it. Like just because we are not a professional like college doesn't mean you are excluded from professional opportunities like that. And I definitely remember asking the person who called me to congrats me on me getting in, and asking her like, oh, how can I like get those opportunities even if we don't study them in school? And it is through this awesome like career services that we have at Harvard. There's very formal recruiting programs that they have. So there's like a whole slew of companies that come in if you're interested in investment banking, if you're interested in consulting, if you're interested in legal opportunities. There's a whole set of employers who come on campus. They'll hold info sessions with you. You go to those, you kind of like talk with other upperclassmen who've done the same opportunities you've done before. You've talked to the companies that you're interested in. You apply. There's a formal interview process where we like have the interviews in our career center. So you don't have to like fly to New York City unless it's like a final round or something. So I thought that was really helpful. And, you know, even though I didn't get my internship in sophomore year through Harvard, I've heard many of my friends who have done sophomore programs with companies that come on campus. So if you're worried about getting opportunities, I would not worry. Harvard has a whole long list of it. You're gonna go through the career services website and online. There would be so many opportunities. I remember applying to like tons of them, like 100 or so in total before I like graduated.
Thank you, Helen. Maybe Samir could go next. Same question.
Thank you, Oscar. So I had 2 internships during college with different parts of the US government. I was very interested back then in being part of policymaking, and I got 2 pretty cool opportunities, which I just applied to, just applying on their website to their general application process. As Helen mentioned, the Harvard Career Office does assist students with a number of internship opportunities. With these 2 US government jobs, I just applied and had some interviews and was lucky to get them. Of course, I applied to many other things that I did not get. So in the summer after my second year of college, I was selected to be an intern at the US Embassy in Tokyo in their Environment, Science, and Technology division. In high school, I had studied Japanese for 4 years, and I continued studying Japanese in college at Harvard. Something else I maybe could have mentioned among my most favorite courses from college, all the days I spent in Japanese with many students who either were studying Japanese to kind of deepen their heritage, or like me, just had an interest and thought Japanese was cool. So maybe based in part on my purported Japanese abilities, which were maybe not as strong as I made the interviewers think, I was able to get an internship with the US Embassy in Japan, which was my second time in Japan. I had gone there once during high school. So that's actually where I met the Prime Minister. He came over to the embassy campus for a 4th of July party that summer. And I, by chance, happened to be at the front of the greeting line when he came to have his hand shaken. And so I bowed and I gave him the proper greetings, I hope. And then I was quickly ushered aside before I could do any more damage. So that was pretty cool. I got to understand how diplomacy works. It's often not that exciting. Diplomats from the US or any country go out to attend local events like a port opening or some environmental cleanup project, at least in our case in the Environment, Science, and Technology division. I also learned about a big policy topic that then later informed my undergraduate thesis, namely the very controversial International Whaling Commission, which was formed in the 1950s, 40s, or 50s, I think. And then in the 1980s, the IWC imposed a ban on commercial whaling because their numbers were quite low and in danger. The Japanese wanted to continue hunting whales, which they actually did under the auspices of scientific whaling. It was a big controversy, and I first learned about it in my role in the US Embassy. The second internship was at the US Congressional Budget Office in DC. I had that after my 3rd year of college. And there I learned a lot about how budgets are actually set, the role of the CBO in doing like cost estimates for different programs or different proposed tax policies and stuff like that. And I still learn lessons from that job to this day, in fact, in thinking about developing reasonable cost estimates for various proposed government programs that might cross my desk in say my state government job or even my current nonprofit job.
Thank you, Samir. And then Phil, just the same question.
Yeah, so I think mine were largely through, and I think I mentioned this before, the Institute of Politics, which is housed within the John F. Kennedy Junior School of Government. And so there is a program called the Director's Internship Program, and the IOP will partner with a number of different organizations, mostly in DC, but also in Boston and New York and a couple other places. And they allocate 1 or 2 spots to Harvard students every single year. So it's kind of a nice pipeline. And anyway, I got one of those working with the Center for American Progress my sophomore year. So went down to DC for the summer, did some work with their economic policy team, mainly related to trade issues and trade adjustment assistance programs, and learned a lot about, at the time, the U.S. was negotiating a trade deal with Korea and a couple other countries as well. And so, got to work on those issues. Had another thing come through, again, from just like a random conversation that I had with someone about working in a campaign finance role. And I actually got to come back to Chicago for my junior summer and work with the Obama campaign for his 2012 reelection and doing the campaign finance, which was fun because you get to talk to people and, try and raise money, and talking people out of their money is, it's a tough skill. But it also taught me a lot about campaign finance law, and I thought that was pretty fascinating. I think one of the fun things about being a Harvard student is we certainly have a lot of formal opportunities that you can go to. If you are a science person, there's an entire science board in our science center that says, like, hey, here are the current opportunities that you can come and check out and like go talk to these professors. Same thing in the Institute of Politics if you're more like government, poli-sci focused. And I imagine that, those sorts of like formal opportunities are present in many of our other departments. What I also found from personal experience and also anecdotally through many of my friends is there's a lot that can be said about just kind of, cold emailing or cold calling people and expressing an interest and doing this in a smart way. Oscar, this may be like jumping the gun on your next question about like hard or soft skills that we learned, but I'll just say this. I think that you really have the opportunity to make not just your own major or your own area of study. If you go to Harvard, you really have the opportunity to make your own internship too. And, it's not the kind of thing that you show up and people are just like handing them out like candy. I mean, you've got to work for it. But, I think that the person you become to get to a school like Harvard, I mean, you are hardworking, you're following up with people, you have initiative, you have the grit, right? You can take a couple knocks here and there and not let, someone telling you, that you've been rejected from a program or no, that's not going to stop you from finding an alternative or like, finding a way to make it work. And that sort of tenacity, I think, really serves our undergrads very well when they're looking for internships to supplement what it is that they're learning in the classroom.
Thank you, Philip. And yeah, thank you all for your answers. I think I'm going to move on to the audience questions just because I don't want to take away time from that. And if anyone still has that question about hard or soft skills that Harvard provides you or some of your favorite books, just feel free to ask that. But if anyone has a question, please feel free to raise your hand in the participants section. And yeah, you can unmute. Cole.
Yes, hi. I had a question about while you were applying, how did you try to stand out in your application? And what would you recommend we would do to stand out in our application?
I think anyone can take that. Oh, Philip.
I could take it.
Samir, you go for it.
Sorry, Phil. So I think Harvard or any fairly competitive college in the top 50 or something like that of national rankings, or even here within Illinois, any of the top colleges, U of I in Champaign, UIUC, Northwestern, U of Chicago, or whatever it might be, want to see that high school students have distinguished themselves in some way beyond just getting great grades. So sometimes that might mean you try to get a leadership position in an established extracurricular activity. If you have some amazing talent and you win some award for being an all-state swimmer or something like that, that certainly helps. I think if either of those first two options I mentioned don't seem appropriate, then sometimes the thing to do is start a new venture. Try to identify some unmet need of community service or social programming or whatever it might be within your high school, or a way that the students at your high school can serve the broader community and start a new venture. And of course, take it seriously, treat it with the responsibility it deserves, not just something for your resume. And if you do a great job, that will certainly serve you well in college admissions.
Phillip or Helen, if you have any added insight.
I think the only thing I would add to that, and that's certainly correct. I do a fair amount, or at least I did before the pandemic and the lockdown shut everything down. But I used to do a lot of the in-person meetings with college fairs with, students who would show up and just kind of ask questions about what we were about and do the information. And invariably, we always get the, question about how do you stand out? How do you get in? Like, what's the secret sauce? And candidly, I don't necessarily know that any of us is in, a position to really tell you what that is. I think our admissions team is always looking for just a number of different things, right? They're looking to build a really interesting, diverse class, diversity of thought, diversity of perspective, diversity of experience. And so, it's not going to be a one size fits all, certainly, answer for anyone. What I can say is, I think our admissions office really takes to students and prospective candidates who, like Samir said, just show that dedication to whatever it is that they're doing, right? We are, in many ways, I think, kind of like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, in the sense that, we're hoping that you take advantage of what the school has to offer, whether it is, economics, or whether it's law, or whether it's classics, or, any of these other wonderful disciplines that we can help you with. We want you to make the most of the resources that are on campus. And, I think it's very much our hope that you turn around and are able to make some sort of a positive contribution to the world, to society, to your discipline. That's what we're offering. And I think that to the extent that you've been able to do that, or show that sort of passion and drive in high school with whatever it is that you're doing, if it's true, and if it's not just for the resume, I think that's really going to come through.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone has said so far. I think the only thing I would add is kind of just like Harvard isn't just recruiting, or isn't just gathering like the smartest people. At least like when I was applying, I felt like Harvard's class and what Harvard was looking for was more on like, how do you show leadership? And it's not just leadership for the resume, like we've just said. It's about, if you're committed to something, like how long have you done it? How much further are you interested in it? I feel like it's showing that, like Phillip has said, like what can you get from Harvard, but then also what can you contribute? Like when you're at Harvard, what do you envision to bring? Like, are you going to get involved in these clubs? Are you going to like take advantage of office hours, go get more involved with research with the professor, like just kind of showing like who you are, what you bring to the table, really flesh out like this I guess like like a profile of yourself. Like I know people talk about like writing essays, but really writing it about yourself, not just like what people might want to read. It's like what's unique about you, not just like a copy and paste of like, this is who I am, this is my like resume or whatever.
Thank you all for your answers. Anyone else, if anyone else has a question, please feel free to raise it. Nikita.
Yeah, thank you. So I just had a question, if maybe you could elaborate on the research that you did with your professors at your time at Harvard.
Um, if anyone, I think it was hard to hear, but I think Nikita asked about any research that you might have done with any of your professors in any of the fields you were majoring in or interested in.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't do like a lot of research with my professors, but I have like a roommate who was doing research with like a HBS, Harvard Business School professor, even though we were in college. Thesis is an awesome way for you to like do research or work with a professor. Like in your senior year, you have this option to go and like dig deep into a specific topic, and like you can just go and work with a professor. They'll help you, they'll mentor you in terms of how do you get to like the right question, what type of research will kind of prove out your hypothesis, things like that. I don't know if Phil or Samir, you've done other stuff. I thought one of you did a thesis.
I did not do a thesis, but I did help a government professor to assemble a database looking at presidential pardons and historically, like when when is it that pardons are not just when is it that pardons are most commonly issued, which is usually like on the last day or two of their presidency. Not all that surprising, but we were really curious about what sorts of crimes would be pardoned or commuted. So I split this task with another person, and we just kind of had a database of all of the pardons that have ever been issued by presidents, and just kind of had to go through and build our own data set and catalog and cross-reference against the federal code to see what is it what does 18 USC random section number actually mean, right? And then kind of go and categorize that. So it was an interesting exercise in building your own data set, mining your own data, and I guess kind of like working with another person and making sure that you are coding things smartly and in the same way, because one of the things that you worry about when you have multiple people who are doing the coding on any sort of data is you want to make sure that people are applying consistent principles and rules to the same data sets. So you're not getting a skew one way from one person and a separate skew one way from a different person. So I learned a lot about just the process of going through and thinking through your methodology. And I know that many of my friends who also did research, although I had a lot of friends who did a lot of research for doctors and in labs, so a lot more science focused. They had really wonderful experiences and were able to go in physically into labs and do a lot of the interesting lab work, which has helped them land into fun PhD programs.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you, Ellen. Samir, do you have any added insight?
Yeah, sure. As an undergraduate, I was a research assistant for one professor from the government department, I think. It was a little bit outside my immediate areas of interest, or at least outside what my environmental science concentration would suggest is my area of interest. I think he was studying the history of political violence and reconciliation in various developing countries, and he was building a database of different things that happened. So I just thought it was a cool chance to, frankly, work closely with the professor on his research to understand how a working scholar gathers his evidence on a day-to-day basis, and also learn about an interesting new area of academic inquiry. I worked with him for 3 or 4 months on that project. And then in my own coursework, I, over time, became more comfortable writing a 20-page term paper and then a 40-page term paper, which certainly in high school would have sounded very scary, building up to the 100+ page senior thesis I eventually wrote about the international whaling topic. And I think all of that was great preparation, because now in my attorney job, I regularly churn out briefs and other pieces of writing that are 40, 50, 70, 100 pages long. So I think developing good work habits to construct a piece of that length, as well as getting over the psychological barrier of dealing with a piece of writing of that length was quite useful.
Hey, Samir, and thank you all for your answers. Anyone else want to raise their hand? Blake?
Yeah, hi. So my question is, what was the transition from high school to college at Harvard like? And did you feel prepared once you got there?
I'll go first. I think my transition was a little bit challenging, I would say, in part because I was an only child when I grew up. I'd never had siblings in the house. So living with people my age in a suite, Harvard typically puts kids, freshmen and upperclassmen, I should say upper class persons, in a suite of 2, 3, or 4 students with a shared bathroom. So just sharing the bathroom, realizing you're supposed to knock on somebody's bedroom before you barge in, which sounds obvious, but wasn't obvious to me when I was 18, having been an only child growing up, was a big transition. And of course, that's an important part of an important, I think, social function that college plays for kids who are fortunate to go to a college where you stay in dorms, learning how to live on your own and get along with roommates. Sadly, it's something that at least during the current academic year, most students are missing out on. Hopefully it'll be back to normal sooner than later. And also, as I alluded to in my previous remarks about, I think when I was responding to the question of why did you choose Harvard, I definitely had to raise my game as far as effort and study habits and preparation for exams compared to high school, because the material was more difficult and my peers were uniformly very smart and courses were often graded on a curve. So I really had to work hard to continue performing at a high level.
Phil or Helen, if you had any other comments.
Go
you
ahead,
want to
Phil.
go for it?
No, you can go first.
I was just going to say, I think everyone's adjustment is going to be a little different. We're all coming from very different high school experiences. And I think it's not uncommon that, you show up and then you feel, for lack of a better word, dumb. And you're just like surprised at how much more prepared your peers are than you are, or how smart they are, or, just knowledgeable they are about a random subject. And yeah, I mean, that can be intimidating. I think thankfully, Harvard is the kind of place where we value collaboration a lot. And it's kind of nice to be, and I realized this when I got there, it was nice to be known as like, the guy who really enjoys rowing, which I did and still do. And it wasn't just, Phil, who's always who's in every AP class or whatever, right? So you're not necessarily known for your academic accolades, you're known for something else. And that was really cool. But I personally found it a little challenging to adapt because, I took I went to St. Ignatius, I think, as I mentioned, and took every AP that I could, and, thought that I was well prepared. And I got there and I was like, wow, everyone is so much smarter than I am. Like, where do I fit in? Did they make a mistake? Right. And it's not uncommon to feel a bit of imposter syndrome. And I definitely felt that. And, I think that to the extent that you feel that when you get onto campus, it's important to remember, the admissions office does not, make mistakes, and they have selected you for a reason. And, you are here to thrive and to learn. And, it's important to remember that you're here to learn. You're not expected to know everything. You're expected to, be a sponge, and you're expected to apply yourself and try your hardest and make something wonderful out of the resources that Harvard gives you. But, I think being kind to yourself and not, beating yourself up about not knowing, not having taken vector calc, or not having taken, a really tough statistics or an economics class by the time you show up for day one of your freshman year. That's really important. There's plenty of learning to be done throughout college, and certainly plenty of learning to be done after it.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Samir and Phil has said. I'm gonna be honest, I thought it was super challenging. Coming from like a public school, going into Harvard, I was not, like everyone said, not prepared to kind of see how outsmarted or like how accomplished everyone was when I first started freshman year. It was like, someone's the Intel winner, someone's already done research that is helping to cure cancer. But like, that's only part of the class. And totally agree, like be kind to yourself. Like there is an adjustment. There's an adjustment from going to high school where everything is structured for you to college where your time is really based on how you want to use it, and learning to time manage or learning to prioritize what's important to you. Like when I first got there, I wanted to like do everything because like we would have this crazy big activities fair, and all the clubs sounded really interesting, and I wanted to join all of them, and I wanted to do this and that. But there's a limit, like Phil had said in the beginning, there's scarcity. There's a scarce amount of time that you have. Like you have classes to go, you have activities or research that you want to do. So being cognizant of like, take a step back, recenter yourself. Like you're there for a reason. You weren't picked randomly. Imposter syndrome is really real, but also know that like, hey, you're special in your own unique way, and you were admitted to Harvard, so you're there for a reason. And there is going to be a time to adjust. Like I think I only felt more adjusted like after sophomore year started, and I'm sure people's path to adjustment is different. Just like take your time if you have to. But I thought like the most helpful thing for the adjustment was finding friends who were there to like calm you down or to just to help you. And I kind of like managed myself, like being from, I guess like everyone's so smart. I took the path of like, oh, they're all really smart. I really want to make friends who are smarter than me, who can push me to be better and to kind of even help me when I have problems. Like if I have problem sets I need to do and I don't know how to do it, I know someone who could teach me or who at least can point me to the right direction. So I think like finding friends is a good way to kind of alleviate that challenge of adjusting.
Thank you, Helen. I already know it's already 12:05, so if a panelist has to leave, I completely understand. But if Lizzie just wants to ask her question really quickly to wrap up.
Yeah, you may have touched on this a bit, but what did you find to be your most valuable experience or opportunity at Harvard that you weren't necessarily expecting or aware of, either as a high school student or as you entered Harvard as a freshman?
I'll go. I think one of the coolest experiences that I ever had, was getting to talk to the, I think he was either the president or the vice president of the NRA at the time. And, I don't own a gun, and I'm not a, Second Amendment supporter, or like touting, like massive support for the Second Amendment. But I did find it incredibly interesting. So the setup was this: I was in the library, I was in Lamont Library, I was writing a paper on protections in China for intellectual property rights, which, the basis of that thesis was they don't really exist. But, you know, I remember I was writing and got a call from Kathy McLaughlin, who is the executive director of the Institute of Politics. As you can probably tell, I spent a lot of time at the Institute of Politics. And Kathy called me up and she said, "Hey, what are you doing tonight? Do you want to get dinner?" And I was like, "Oh, that'd be cool. But I've got this like paper that I've kind of procrastinated on, and I really should just like knock it out." She was like, "No, let me explain to you. So David Keene, the NRA guy, he's coming here. He's going to do an event at the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum, and then we're going to go for a lobster dinner after. Do you want to be in? It's going to be you, me, David, John King from CNN, and like maybe 2 other people." And I was like, "Oh, all right, cool. Yeah. Let me go, you know, like put on a suit or whatever, and I will meet you in 30 minutes for this event." So I like shut my laptop down, ran across the street to my dorm, took a quick shower, put a suit on, like showed up to this event, and, you know, got to see John King and interview David Keene. And then at the end of it, sat down next to David Keene at this lobster joint in the square. And I was just at this dinner for like an hour and a half talking with him and John King and this entire like group of people. And I just thought to myself, like, you know, it's really cool that you are presented with the opportunity to not only speak with like high level and public figures like this, but especially to sit down over a dinner and have a conversation with someone who you may disagree with. And I think that, you know, one of the things I learned most from my experience in undergrad is the world is full of people who have different opinions than you. And you really learn a lot about them and about yourself and about, you know, the underlying assumptions that you may hold by talking with people. And, you know, just kind of having that sort of civil debate and that discourse. And, you know, I think to this day, that remains one of the coolest experiences that I've ever had.
Helen or Samir, if you want to
go. Two extracurriculars that I got involved with in college were the Harvard radio station, which is all student run and has an antenna that broadcasts to all of Boston and is actually a serious radio station that classical music aficionados, at least, and jazz, I think, enjoy in the Boston area. As I mentioned, I have no musical background, so I wasn't a music DJ, but I was part of the radio news department. So that was pretty cool. And I also got involved in a teaching program where we taught lessons each week in Boston area public schools, public high schools, which kindled my interest in education. And I went on to join the Teach for America program after college before going on to my economics master's program in law school. So I did not expect to pursue either of those when I started as a freshman, but they turned out to be really fun.
Yeah, I'll just add to that 2 things. One was study abroad. I was doing a study abroad with Harvard's program in Beijing, and that was really rewarding and something I would have never thought I would have done. Like this was after freshman year, the summer after freshman year, and I thought to myself, well, I kind of think I want to work in China at some point. I was learning Chinese, also plug for Harvard's language programs. You learn so much so fast in the language programs, whether it's Chinese, Japanese, whatever language you are, like it's accelerated. It's really good. You bond with all the people you like take classes with and have small classes with. So like that's awesome. But really the study abroad program was really great too, because we were doing a joint program with like Harvard and Yale. And so I met some of my like best friends, I would say. Like we still keep in touch now, and it's been years since we've done that study abroad program. And then during the actual program itself, there's a ton of other study abroad programs too. So we've like met some Princeton people as well. Like the world kind of gets really small, even though we're in a whole different country, and China is massive, but it's just really awesome to see how like all the connections you make end up staying with you for a long time, because it's like such an intensive program. B, the experiences you have just can't be reproduced anywhere else, I would say. And then the second thing is, I don't know where I was, but I was at a random event and I met Rebecca Minkoff. She's like a fashion designer. She has those bags. And then I ended up not really knowing what she looks like, but I was talking with this guy who turns out to be her husband. And then Rebecca Minkoff comes by and then it was like, oh, how's it going? And I'm like, great. I think you're the fashion designer, but I don't know. This is really cool. So those are like the type of things that you get into, like kind of what Phil was saying. You just meet a ton of people you never thought you could have met on campus. And sometimes it's just a random, like me going to this event. I didn't even know what was going on, but my friends were like, oh, we should go. And so I went, and you just meet a ton of people I never would have been able to meet, like just being in my high school or growing up, whatever. So Harvard, I think, offers a lot in that.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you guys so much for your answers. And yeah, I think we're just going to wrap up the panel. Well, thank you so much for everyone for coming, and thank you so much to all the panelists for taking the time out of their Saturdays to do this. Sorry, this went a little bit over, but thank you all for your questions. And for our next events, we have our Entrepreneurship Accelerator program that's open to all, and our Economics in College with Chief Economist Jay Bryson is getting rescheduled. So for members, keep in touch for the newsletter, and we'll let you know when that gets sorted out. But again, thank you so much for coming, and I hope you all have a great rest of your Saturdays.
Thanks, Oscar.
Great. Thanks for hosting us.
Thanks for inviting us. Yes.
Thank you so
See
much.
y'all later.
Have a great day.
Thanks.